Thanks, Dr. Raj Pipar, for that introduction. As Dr. Raj Pipar said, hi everyone, my name is Keshav, and I'm a PhD student at OSU working with Professor Jason Weiss and Professor Burkanishkar. Uh, Before we begin, I'd just like to confirm that my screen is visible and the laser pointer is also visible.
Yes, they're both good.
Awesome. All right. So before we begin, a big thanks to our financial sponsor, the Electric Power Research Institute. So what we're presenting in this talk is the result of the work we did as a project for this sponsor, and almost the entire OSU infrastructure materials team was involved. Professor Burkanishka, Professor Jason Weiss, Professor David Trejo, and Professor Jason Eidecker, as well as a big shout out to all my fellow graduate research colleagues without whom this work could not have been completed: Shiva, Antara, Gokul, Deb. So in this presentation, I'll give you a brief introduction into the current mixture proportioning approach, which most of us are familiar with. We'll also look briefly at performance-based specifications and why we need performance-based performance-based mixture proportioning approaches. Then we'll look at one such approach that we've developed, a performance-based mixture design approach, and finally how we validated that approach, and we will conclude. So let's just jump right in. The current approach, and I'm going to use ACI 211 as an example here. It's going to be a 10-step approach that starts with the target strength. We work through the workability or slump requirements, estimate the aggregate size, estimate the mixing water, and finally at the end, we would get a mixture proportion and you cast a few trial batches to confirm. And this works great for OPC systems, but this method has two major drawbacks. The first drawback which we see is that this approach does not natively consider SCM incorporation in the mixed design approach. And what I mean by this is the weight replacement of OPC with an SCM seems like an afterthought. In the current approach, the weight replacement of an SCM is decided only at step 4, and that too without any guidance on how much SCM to use. The mass of SCM that's used is determined either from experience or experiments, experience, experiments, or anecdotes. The second major drawback of this approach is that this approach lumps all durability criteria into the choice of one parameter, which is the water to cement ratio. And what I mean by this is, let's say we want to design concrete to meet certain durability targets. For that, we would pull out ACI 318, determine the exposure classes, and obtain a limit on the water to cement ratio and from each of these exposure classes. We would then select the minimum water to cement ratio between the exposure class and the strength, and then set that as the water to cement ratio of a limit for our concrete. And this essentially hides all the durability criteria into one single parameter, which is the water to cement ratio. Just to say this again in the form of a takeaway, which would be my first takeaway, the current mixture proportioning approaches are great for concrete made with OPC. However, the current approaches do not consider SCMs natively, and they lump all strength and durability requirements into one parameter, which is the water to cement ratio. The second objective of my talk is to illustrate the concept of a performance-based mixture proportioning approach and to show you the approach that we've developed. So before we jump into performance-based mixture design, we need to understand performance-based specifications. And performance-based specifications are already here. They're not something to look forward to in the future. They're already here. For example, AASHTO PP84 is a performance-based specification guide for concrete, and it specifies the performance of concrete in terms of its strength, formation factor, and resistance to calcium oxychloride damage, among other things. And what I mean by this is that it allows each durability requirement to be considered individually and specified individually. It doesn't just say, hey, limit the water to cement ratio to an arbitrary value like 0.40. It says you need to have a minimum strength of 4000 PSI. Let's say you need to have a minimum formation factor of, let's say, 250 for a certain application and such. You don't just limit the water to cement ratio. So in this talk, I'll show you a mixture design approach that we've developed that allows us to proportion concrete mixtures to meet these performance targets. So just again, a step back, why do we need a performance-based mixture proportioning approach? Well, because SCMs are already widely used in concrete. I'm sure most of us know that, but there is literature on this as well. A study in 2007 itself noted that over half the concrete in the US had some amount of fly ash in it. And today, if we look at any concrete, almost 96% of all concrete in the US has some amount of admixture or SCM in it. We find that the challenge on why a performance-based approach has not yet been adopted is because there is a lack of understanding of a scientific tool that considers the wide range of SCM chemistries and reactivities that are available commercially. So thermodynamic modeling is one such tool that can consider the wide range of SEM chemistries and reactivities available. I won't get into too much detail about thermodynamic modeling itself here, but I'll just say that thermodynamics is one of the humanity's best validated theories in physics, and we let the science be the science, and I'll talk a little about how, as engineers, we can use thermodynamic modeling. So thermodynamic modeling in concrete can be used to predict the reaction products that form. So the figure I'm showing on the top right of the slide is what we call the phase assemblage, which is essentially the reaction products that form. The y-axis is the volume of the reaction products, and the x-axis is replacing OPC with fly ash. We can see that thermodynamic modeling predicts the amount of CSH that forms portlandite, ettringite, monosulfate, monocarbonates, and some pore solution. So the volumes of reaction products that form is very useful to know, but it's challenging to link the reaction products directly to engineering performance properties of concrete, like strength or formation factor. So the team at OSU has also developed a pore partitioning model that essentially calculates the volumes of pores and the pore size distribution in cementitious systems. So the figure on the right shows the volume of these phases and pores for the same system what we've calculated above. You can see that we have unreacted binder, we have gel solids, we also have gel water, which is the water in the small pores less than 5 nanometers in size. We have capillary water, which is pore sizes between 5 nanometer and a couple of microns, and we have the volume of chemical shrinkage. So the team at OSU has also linked the pore structure in concrete to its engineering properties using other models that are already available in the literature. And it's come to, thermodynamic modeling has come such a long way that we can confidently now use them in a predictive capacity to predict the performance of concrete. So we can predict the strength, we can predict formation factor, freeze-thaw performance, and calcium oxychloride resistance, among other things. I'm showing you just one result here on the right-hand side of the slide, which is the predicted formation factor as a function of entrained air content in the concrete. The lines are what the model predicts, and the markers are the experimental measurements. And you can see that the model predicts does a really good job of predicting the experimental behavior. So now that we understand how we can use thermodynamic modeling, let's look at the proposed mixture design approach. It's also a 10-step process, but it is significantly different from the current ACI approach. And we will see this as we walk through the approach. So the first step of the approach is to assemble performance targets. What I mean is we don't just assemble the strength and the water to cement ratio, we consider each durability requirement individually. So let's look at an example. Let's say we want to design a pavement in the Midwest United States. We want it to meet certain specifications that are set by the state highway agencies, like resistance to calcium oxychloride damage, resistance to freeze-thaw damage. So in order to achieve this, we want the concrete to have a certain load carrying capacity. We want it to have a certain workability. We want it to have a limit on some transport properties. We need it to have calcium oxychloride resistance, if needed, corrosion and ASR resistance. And of course, we need it to have freeze-thaw resistance as well. So now that we have what criteria we're designing for, we can set target values for each of these. And for this pavement, let's say we want a strength of 4,225 PSI. We want a slump of 1 to 2 inches to pave the mixture. We want a minimum formation factor of 270 to limit the transport in the concrete. Let's say we want a maximum calcium hydroxide content in the paste of 20 grams per 100 grams binder. And this is to limit the calcium oxychloride formation in the system. We don't have a limit on the pH here, but if you needed some sort of corrosion resistance or ASR resistance, you could possibly have that as a performance value here. And of course, we need a time to critical, a minimum time to critical saturation, because you want the concrete to be resistant to freeze-thaw damage. The second step is a critical step in this, as it is the input to it's essentially the input to the thermodynamic model. And in this step, what we do is we characterize the materials to determine the cement and SEM chemistry and the SEM reactivity. And already you can see that the SEMs are accounted for during the mixture proportioning calculations. It's not an afterthought. It is in fact just an input into the model. So this is a very key distinction between the current approach and the proposed approach. So I'm showing you one example of what the output of the step 2 would look like. This is essentially the chemistry of the OPC and the fly ash, and it can be obtained from the Mills certificate. And we can also obtain the reactivity. The reactivity can be obtained using the pozzolanic reactivity test, or the PRT. And the PRT was developed at OSU, and it's showing promising results to quantify how much of an SCM can actually react in concrete. So for example, two fly ashes can have the same composition but different amorphous contents and therefore different reactivities. One thing to note is that I don't think there are any other mixture design approaches that actually use the reactivity as such as an input. And reactivity is a pretty important parameter in an SCM that accounts, that basically quantifies how much of it has the potential to react. The third step is the selection of the paste volume. There are several approaches to determine the paste volume, like the PVAV approach or the Tarantula method or Dillard's method. And we've used the PVAV approach, but you can use any of these approaches. One thing I would like to note again is that we would also account for admixtures during the mixture proportioning calculations in step 3 itself. So in the fourth step is where we run the models and determine what we call the feasible space. I'll get to what this means in a second, but in this step we run the models to scientifically obtain the mixture proportion, and we don't obtain the mixture proportional empirically. So again, let's look at the Midwest pavement example which we were looking at. The table on the left is the same table which we had filled up in step 1, the performance specifications and the performance targets. The figure on the right, I'm showing a blank plot with the water to binder on the x-axis and the replacement level on the y-axis. The air content is also calculated for in this model. I'm showing one slice at 6% air, but essentially we run the models from 0 to 15% air or even more air content if we need. I'm just showing a slice at 6% air to make it easier to understand, and also 6% is typically what we target in freeze-thaw resistant mixtures. So let's look at the strength prediction. From these are the contours of the strength predicted by the model, and from this prediction we can see that any water to binder ratio and replacement level within this triangle that I'm highlighting with my laser pointer would meet the target performance. We can do the same for the formation factor, and any region within this quadrilateral that I'm showing with my laser pointer would meet the formation factor requirements. We can do that for calcium hydroxide as well. And we do this for all the performance requirements that we have set. We then overlay all of these contour plots one over each other, and the areal intersection of these areas is essentially what we call the feasible space. And what that means is that any point of water to binder ratio, replacement level, and air content within this feasible space would meet all these target performance criteria that we've set. The fifth step is to select the water to binder ratio, SCM replacement level, and air content from the feasible space that we just developed. So for the Midwest pavement, we have chosen a value of 20% SCM replacement, 6% entrained air, and a water to binder ratio of 0.39. And this choice was made to maximize the fly ash use while still using just a medium range water reducing admixture. We didn't want to switch to a high range water reducing admixture. But yeah, that explanation aside, at this step, you would select the water to binder ratio, SCM replacement level, and the entrained air content. Steps 6 through 9 is basically just math. We calculate the mass of each component, the mass of cement, fly ash, water, fine aggregate, coarse aggregate, etc., using arithmetic. And these steps are quite similar to the current approaches. So just for completeness, I'm showing you the final mixture proportion that we've obtained. So for this Midwest pavement, we would have something like 1677 pounds of coarse aggregate, 1338 pounds of fine aggregate, 465 pounds of cement, 116 pounds of fly ash, and 228 pounds of water. So this brings me to my second takeaway of the talk, which is that the proposed approach, which I just showed you, is a performance-based mixture proportioning approach, and it deviates significantly from the current approach in that SCMs and admixtures are accounted for natively during the mixture design process. It's not an afterthought, it is an input into the model, and we account for it. Secondly, we consider each durability criteria individually. We don't just lump it into one limit on one parameter, the water to cement ratio, which is the current approach. So the end result is a concrete mixture design that is obtained from performance specifications and is predicted to actually meet these performance targets. The third objective of my talk is to validate the proposed approach. And for this, what we did was we had 3 target mixtures in mind. We wanted to target a bridge deck, a Midwest pavement, and a foundation mixture. Each of these had certain durability requirements, like the bridge deck was required to be resistant to chloride ingress, corrosion, and freeze-thaw damage. We just saw the Midwest pavement. And the foundation, we required it to have moderate sulfate resistance and ASR resistance. The actual values of each of these performance parameters are specified in the table below. And I think the presentation's been shared with ACI, so if you want to have a detailed look at that, you can look at it after my talk. We also tested each mixture with 4 fly ashes, and the reason we chose 4 fly ashes is we wanted to cover the wide range of reactivities that were available. So typically the reactivity of fly ash, which we see, is about 40%. And we chose one ash to be close to the typical reactivity of fly ash that we see. We chose one ash which was of high reactivity. In this case, it was 52%. And we chose 2 ashes of a relatively low reactivity, which was between 24 and 23%. I'm also showing you some examples of the feasible spaces in this slide. And we've again, the Midwest pavement is the same as what I showed you when we walked through the example. And the figure on the plot on the right is the feasible space for a foundation mixture made with the high reactivity ash with 30% paste and 2% air. So from now on, I'll just show you some of the results that we've obtained experimentally that validate our approach. So in this slide, I'm showing you the strength that was obtained from experiments. The dashed lines is the target performance that we've set. And all of these mixtures were designed using the mixture proportioning approach, and we meet the strength in all cases. In terms of formation factor, we also meet the formation factor in all cases. Just one mixture, we don't meet the formation factor, but that's because there was a consolidation issue in this mixture alone. You might say, hey, there are 2 other bars that don't actually meet the formation factor target. Well, that's because when we want to validate a mixture proportioning approach, we cast mixtures that are within this feasible space, as well as we cast 2 mixtures that were outside the feasible space to show that if you're outside the feasible space, you don't actually hit your targets. So these 2 points are slightly outside the formation factor line, if you will. And as you can see, they don't actually meet the formation factor targets. If we look at the strength and the calcium hydroxide, this point is actually within those 2 lines, within the feasible space of those 2 lines. And that's why we did meet the strength requirement. And if we look at the calcium hydroxide as well, we do meet the calcium hydroxide targets. And in all mixtures, we also meet the pH targets as well. So this brings me to my third and final takeaway of this talk, which is that a mixture designed using the proposed performance-based approach does actually meet the target durability criteria. And since each durability criteria is individually used, the approach offers fine control over the target performance. And we saw this in when I showed you the 2 points that lay just outside the feasible space, where we could finely control the formation factor if we needed to. And the final takeaway is that the proposed mixture proportioning approach can be used to optimize mixtures to reduce carbon emissions, maximize fly ash use, or reduce the cost, depending on which point you select in the feasible space. So finally, to conclude, in this talk, we looked at a proposed performance-based mixture design approach. And this approach considers the effects of SCMs and admixtures natively. It considers the durability requirements individually, which offers great flexibility in design. And finally, the proposed approach is an alternate, and it has the potential to incorporate off-spec fly ashes and increase SCM use. And this is simply because we use thermodynamic modeling at its core. And thermodynamic modeling can consider the wide range of SCM chemistries and reactivities available commercially. And finally, the proposed approach can also optimize mixtures to lower the carbon emissions of concrete, maximize fly ash use, or lower the cost of concrete. So with that, I thank you for your time and would like to open the floor for any questions or comments. Please drop them in the chat or the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer them.